my name is Chyloe Kurdas. I'm Golf Australia's Female Engagement Senior Manager. And just before we get started tonight, I want to talk a little bit about my journey in golf. Because I'm someone that hopefully one of our golf clubs will eventually snaffle up and get me as a paid up member of a golf club. My journey in golf is 16 years long so far, and I'm not yet a club member. And the reason for that is that I can't yet find a way in which I can't find my place in a golf club. I can't find a club or a product in a golf club that suits my needs. My background in sport is as a footballer. I did karate for about 15 years growing up, and then I spent about 15 years playing Australian football, mostly for Melbourne University. And footy was really good to me. There's probably not anything in the game that I'd like to have done that I didn't get to do. Got to captain a premiership. I played on the very first ever women's game on the MCG, which was quite an amazing day in itself. But I also had 3 knee reconstructions in amongst that. And the first of which was when I found golf. Back in 2002, I was a school teacher back then. And one of my colleagues at the time, she played a bit of golf with her husband. And she said, why don't you come along and have a hit of golf? And I was pretty miserable that year because I was the assistant coach and I wasn't playing. And my team that I was captaining actually went on to win the flag that year. So I was a bit of a sad sack. And she said, come and play some golf. And I was like, oh yeah, whatever. Walking, great, fantastic, woo. And she got me out on a public course across the road from the school that we taught at, and we played 9 holes, and I borrowed some clubs from my husband. They were probably way too long for me, and we had a hack around Chyloe Golf Club, and I had an amazing time. And I hit, I don't know, mid-60s thereabouts, and we went back next week, and the week after, and my 60s came down to late 50s and low 50s, and then eventually we got to 45, and I was like, oh, this is really good. And I'm the sort of person who can't eat one Tim Tam, you know, I've got to eat the whole packet. So it started to really get under my skin, golf, and I was really enjoying it. But of course, my knee got better, thank God, and I got back to playing, and I was training and playing 3, 4, 5 times a week. And what do you think happened to my golf? Dropped away. Why? Because I ran out of time. I was playing another sport, I was teaching full time, and I just didn't have enough time to commit to a second sport at that time. And on top of that, I was a club volunteer at my club, Melbourne University. So I've sat and stood in your shoes for a very long time. I spent 8 years there on the club committee, and I spent 4 years on the league board, the Victorian Women's Football League board, as a volunteer administrator whilst I was captaining my club and whilst I was on the club board. So I understand what it's like for volunteers. So firstly, thank you very much for coming out tonight. I know some of you have worked all day, some of you have played golf all day, some of you have driven a long way to be here. So I do understand what the volunteers do at our golf clubs and in our sporting community. So I just want to say a big thank you from me personally, but also from Golf Australia. We really value the work that you all do as volunteers in our clubs. So I was a volunteer and I was a player, and I just ran out of time, and I was school teaching. Eventually, I found my way into working for AFL Victoria. I spent 10 years there as their female football development manager, and essentially my work there became the catalyst for building the AFLW competition. And that was a really interesting 10 years, working within the AFL context, working from within the AFL to get them to buy in to women's football and commit to establishing a national competition. It was a lot of fun, but it was a lot of hard work. I spent probably 10 years working 55 hours a week. And of course, golf, I couldn't find a place for myself in golf. Except one thing happened for me in 2012 that I was really, that to this day is still quite a life-changing experience. I was one of 17 women selected from around the world to participate in what's called the Global Sport Mentoring Program. I was sent to the US for a month to be mentored by a senior female executive as a guest of the US State Department. And guess who they paired me up with? The LPGA in Daytona Beach in Florida. So I spent a month working at the LPGA, and everyone was like, how's AFL and golf going to go together? This is, you know, I don't know if they're going to quite marry up very well. But what we discovered, my mentor Nancy Henderson over at the LPGA and myself, what we discovered actually, there's so many more similarities because we're working in women's sport. And their struggles were our struggles in the AFL, or my struggles within female sport back here in Australia. There's so many synergies, and we had a great connection. And I learned a lot about how we need to tell our own stories. And one of the things that I took from the LPGA when I got home is I put all of our girls on social media in our high performance teams, and I got them to start telling our own story because the media wouldn't touch AFL for women, that is. So we got our girls to tell our own story, and that came from the LPGA. The other thing that I did when I was there was I had to develop an action plan, a project that I was going to bring home to Australia. And so what I did when I got home, I had one academy for our best under 18 girls in the country. Sarah Perkins was one of those kids in that program who plays for the Adelaide Crows. And what we did was we expanded that academy from 1 to 2 to 3 to 6 to 8 to 12 to be a fully fledged under 18 state league competition. Just like over here in the Sandful, you've got, I think, your under 18 competition for the boys. We have the same thing for the girls over there now. So boys and girls, high performance kids growing up together, doesn't matter if you're male or female, you have the same opportunity to get the best from yourself as an athlete. And I built that expansion project over at the LPGA. And of course I got a couple of golf lessons and I was feeling pretty confident. They gave me a glove and a couple of polos and some balls, and I felt like the absolute professional. And I came home and I started going to the driving range. And what do you reckon I did? Who do you think I took with me? My friends, my partner. And I introduced them to the game because I'd had such a good time over there. My experience was really great and they were really gentle with my entry into the game, and I wasn't feeling very confident with it, but I had a great time. Then I came home and I started getting back at the driving range. But then what do you think happened? Back to work, really busy. And what do you think happened? Dropped away, my golf dropped away. So I disappeared from the game again. In 2016, not long after we announced those 8 licences in the AFL for the AFLW competition, I decided to step away from the AFL and spend a little bit of time having a rest, but also working for myself and exploring other things that I wanted to do. One of the first things I did was go and buy myself a set of clubs. I finally had some time. I went and got them sized properly, so they're much shorter than the ones I had been playing with, which is good and was very helpful. I've got some shoes now, and so I look very professional, and I've got a couple of gloves and I've worn through 1 or 2 already. But I started having a hit, and it was my reward on a Friday afternoon. I found my way back into the game once I had some time. And once I had a little bit of money as well, I had to save up some cash to do it. Where do I play my golf? I play my golf at a local 9-hole public course just near my house. I live in Brunswick in the inner north of Melbourne. Royal Park is just in front of the zoo in Brunswick. It's where Peter Thompson apparently got his start, so I'm on my journey towards greatness. So I'm pretty excited about that. But also, there's a train that runs through it. The 1st and the 9th are separated from the 2nd to the 8th by the train, which is great. You hear the lions and tigers late afternoon when you play a little bit later in the day. There's a homeless guy who sleeps on the 6th. Someone has knitted a Western Bulldog scarf, fair income, around the trunk of a tree on the 7th, and the 8th green always smashes me. So probably a little bit familiar. Some things are the same at your clubs and some things a little bit different perhaps. But I found a place in the game that suits my needs. It doesn't have a big fence. I don't have to pay a huge membership. It costs me $18 to play 9 holes. I hire a rusted old push buggy to get myself around the course. It squeaks a little bit, but it suits my needs, and it's golf the way I like it and the way it works for me. I don't have to spend a whole bunch of money. I can play whenever I want. It's generally got pretty easy access to tee times. I'm not having to play fast because I've got a group of guys behind me that I'm all stressed about. I'm not having to play slow because there's a group of people ahead of me either. I generally can get on when I need to. There's not much sand and there's definitely no water, but there is the tram track, so avoid the trams while I'm looking for my ball on the tracks. But it suits my needs. Why do I play golf? I don't want to play competition golf. I spent 30 years chasing a scoreboard. I am done with trying to win. I'm over that. I don't need that anymore in my life. I feel much more zen about things. And in fact, golf makes me feel really zen. Why? I always come away from golf feeling very calm and relaxed, which people always go, that's a bit weird. But I do. I feel very calm after I finish playing. Why? Because my intention when I play is about enhancing my mental health. I play golf because it's mindfulness and movement. My background's in health promotion and psychology, and I understand the importance of investing in positive psychology to stay mentally healthy and mentally fit. Just like I go running to keep my body fit, I play golf to keep my heart and my head healthy and well. Why? Mindfulness. When you play every shot, you've got to be in the here and now, don't you? If you're worried about that last shot, or you're worrying about what's going to happen to your scorecard when you play this shot, what happens to your shot? Probably not as good as it needs to be. All right. So if you want to play golf, and I know this, I'm not that great, but I know this. If you want to play golf well, you've got to be in the moment and mindful on that shot. And every step of the way through that shot, you've got to be in it, don't you? Here and now. Don't worry about the past, don't worry about the future. Worry about what you've got in front of you right now. That is a definition of mindfulness. So you throw mindfulness and movement in, and that actually enhances your mental health. We'll take you outside and we'll put you under sunshine, vitamin D on your skin. That again enhances your mental health. We put you out in bushland or natural surroundings rather than big concrete blocks. That again enhances your mental health. And you put all those together and the result is even greater. So for me, golf's role in my life is around feeding my mental wellness. And that's the role it plays in my life. Why do I share this story with you when I'm not a club member, and why am I standing up in front of you when I'm not a club member? Because I'm a potential club member. I could be someone that you could get. And I'm not just one person. When I speak to my friends about my experience of the game, because everyone's going, all my friends are like, how are you going in golf? And I'm like, I'm loving it. It's a great organisation to work for. I'm having a wonderful time. And I'm learning so much, and I'm really well supported by the organisation and by the people in the community. But my friends also go, I really want to play too, but it just seems so hard to get into. And all of the things that we'll talk about tonight, my friends around me, my peers around me, I'm 43, I've got a lot of younger friends, people around my own age, and they all say very similar things. They find more barriers to getting into the game than they do enablers. And so I share this with you tonight because your journey into the game, when you entered the game, probably the context might have been a little bit different. Some of the things that are barriers for me might not have been present back then. Some of the things that were enablers for you might not be present for me right now, or my friends and my cohort right now. And if we are going to take the sport forward for women and girls, what's really important is we understand the needs of our potential members as well as our current day members. Because if we want to have a future membership in our game, we actually have to understand what's happening in the lives of the people that we want to attract to the game. What are the things that we have to address and deal with so that they can see golf as something that can enhance their life? And so the only way in which we can build golf as a product to suit the needs of our future members is actually to hear them and understand them and listen to them and learn from that and start to evolve golf in the way that those future members might need us to, so that they can find their place in the game just like I found my way to get into the game. Okay? So thank you very much for coming along tonight. Thank you very much for hearing me. You're going to start to hear from each other in a moment, but before we do that, I want to talk through this roadshow and why we've got the roadshow, why we've set the roadshow up the way we have. It's about 50 locations all around Australia. We'll finish up in mid-September. We've invited the following people: club captains and women's captains, and club presidents and women's presidents. I understand that not every club is set up that way, but I do understand that some clubs are set up that way. And we've also invited our golf club managers, and I also understand that we have some people in the room that are here because they're just really passionate about getting more women into the game, which is fantastic. It's a brilliant turnout tonight, so good. But why have we invited these people? I'm an absolute believer, and I've seen this in my whole time in sport over the last 30 years, attitude reflects leadership. You are the people that will change this game for the better in the future. Why? Because you lead our sport, not me. I'm one person at head office in Melbourne. We have 1,500 golf clubs around the country led by wonderful people like yourselves that give up your time voluntarily. You are the people that will decide what the experience of the game will be like for those future members, to keep them in the game or to attract them to the game. You are the ones that will decide what the culture is like, because people will follow your lead. You have a powerful platform in your golf clubs and your communities. And with that platform comes a privilege. You have the privilege of deciding what our game will be moving forward. I'm one person, but if there are 1,500 clubs leading in a way that enhances the experience so girls and women can see a place for themselves in the game, then that's on you. You guys get to lead where we want to go. And that's why we've invited you in tonight, because you are the leaders in our game, not me. Okay? What our purpose of our roadshow is around sharing the vision. We want to encourage you to learn more about it and get involved, but we also want to empower you. To empower people means to give them the tools that they need to achieve the things that they want to achieve with the game. Once your club decides what you want to do and the direction you want to go in to enhance women's engagement in the game, we want to make sure that you've got the tools to be able to get yourselves there. And that's what our job is to do. As the national sporting organisation, our role and responsibility is to serve the sport and serve the people who lead the sport. Not stand on top of your shoulders. Our role is to put you on our shoulders and help you get to wherever it is you want to go. As a national sporting organisation, our role is to serve you and support you. And that's what this roadshow is about. Empowering you, giving you the tools so that you can lead your clubs. We will cover off the strategy itself. We will also cover off the Human Rights Commission guidelines that were released on Tuesday. We'll share with you some strategies that we think you can implement in your clubs, and also some actions. We're going to give you some suggested actions that you can take. So we're going to give you some ideas. So as soon as you get outside tonight, you can jump on that phone and start talking about this with the people that count in your clubs. We're going to move right on now. I'm going to talk a little bit about Vision 2025, and here's a timeline of how it's sort of come about. This is not some snazzy, quick strategy that's been put together. There's been a fair bit of work. I'm sort of the last cab off the rank really to get here. So much stuff's been done, but some things I want to highlight around this. There was a working group set up about 2 or 3 years ago now, and that had a bunch of different people from different sports. Todd Woodbridge, as we know, is a great tennis player, but he's a golf commentator. His daughter plays pretty good golf as well. Kari Webb sat on that working group. Rachel Hetherington sat on that working group. Jan Cooper, who was the national female manager at the AFL, she sat on that working group. And the whole idea of that was to try and actually start this journey, a working party that could start the journey around reinvigorating the game for women and girls. So it started back then. Golf Australia's obviously made a really strong commitment around this, but at the same time, the RNA also did the same thing. Now, I was very fortunate to go to the RNA on my 6th day in the job. I know, sorry. And I didn't really understand the RNA until I got to St Andrews. I was like, they're sending me to this place, St Andrews, for golf. And then I got there, and it was a beautiful way to be immersed in the history of the game. But what I loved about the RNA is they were like, yeah, we excluded women for a long time until about 3 or 4 years ago, and we really understand that we've created a bit of a problem in the game, so now we're going to be the solution. And we're going to put our money where our mouth is. They're investing £80 million over the next, £80 million pounds, I should say, over the next 10 years around re-engaging women in the game. And they're investing in 5 countries, England, Ireland, Scotland, Wales and Australia. My role is funded by the RNA. This is a global movement. The RNA, for those that don't know, the governing body of the game outside of the USA and Mexico. And they believe so firmly in being part of the solution, and in fact leading the solution, that they're investing so heavily all around the world. People are watching very closely what we're doing in Australia. And my personal desire is for people to look to Australia as the shining light around gender equality and gender inclusion, and how well we can evolve the game to suit the needs of women and girls. So we've got a great opportunity for us to lead the rest of the world. How often do you get to change a course of history? All of you here tonight are leaders that get to change a course of history. I think that's pretty exciting. The last thing is we finalised the strategy about 12 months ago. We launched it at the Women's Open back in 2018. Before I was appointed, I came on board in April. Stacey Peters came on board just not long before that in our Female Pathways role. And now we're at this place. We're implementing the process. Okay, and we're going to keep evolving it and reviewing it as we go, because we've got 7 years to fix all of this gender inequality. So I love that. We've got a fair bit of time up our sleeves. We're 1 year in, nearly. So the strategy itself, I want to talk you through it, and I'm sure you've read it. I emailed it out to you. You've probably saw it at the launch last year, or you've read about it online. But what I wanted to share with you, the best thing about this, what I love about this, is the vision for the game. Most sports, when you say to them, what do you want to be? What do you want this strategy to stand for? Where do you want to get to? Oh, we want to be the biggest, the best, the strongest, the fastest, the #1 TV rights deal, the most participants in the country, you know, the biggest fan base or the biggest membership. That's not what this is about. This is about making sure that golf is a place where girls feel inspired to participate, where they feel welcomed and nurtured throughout, and they're empowered to achieve their goals. Not the goals that we set for them, the goals that they have for themselves. And so in that vision is not about how many we do golf to, it's about how well we do golf. It's about how we position the experience of the game so that it suits the needs of women and girls. And if we evolve the game so it suits the needs of women and girls, what do you reckon they'll do? They'll stay. They'll give it a go and they'll stay. And who will they bring with them? Who will they bring with them? Their friends, their family, their partners, their children, their grandchildren. And they'll stay in the game. But if they come to the game and they have a touch point with the game and it doesn't suit their needs, or it's hostile, or it's not supportive, or it's not encouraging, what do you reckon they'll do? They'll leave, and what will they say? They'll tell their friends, and their friends are gone as well. It's an amazing fork in the road, isn't it? If we get the experience right, if we listen to the needs of women and girls and what they're telling us and what they're telling other sports, and we adapt accordingly and we evolve accordingly, then we get to keep them and we get to keep the people around them. And we get to regenerate the game for women and girls moving forward, and the game for everyone, mind you. But if we don't get the experience right, if we don't listen to what they're telling us and we don't change things, we're going to lose another generation of women that we could potentially get. Okay? So I love this. It's about how well we do golf, not how many we do golf to. If we get it right, the numbers will take care of themselves. Our goal is to transform the sport, which I love. We get to use this word in golf, transform. All right? We probably don't talk about golf and transforming that often, but I love that. We want it to be highly engaging, accessible, and fully inclusive for women and girls. What are the different characteristics when we talk about fully accessible? What are some of the characteristics of people that we might need to consider if we're talking about being fully inclusive? Gender is one of those. What else could they be? Yep, Absolutely. A disability or ability? Yep. What else? Just call them out.
Shy.
Sorry?
Very shy.
Well, you're talking about, about their personality? Yeah, absolutely. Making sure there's a space for every type of person. Yeah, what else?
Time poor.
Yep. People that are time poor? Absolutely. How do we facilitate the game? How do we transfer the game so it's accessible for people who are time poor? Absolutely. What about race? Children, mothers? Absolutely. People that struggle financially, where money is hard. People from low socioeconomic demographics. People from different cultural backgrounds. People from different religions. My dad came from Turkey to Australia when he was 13. I came from Turkey. Turkey's not a place with there's a lot of golf players. It's a really rich person sport over there. Very working class family. And that my family moved here in 1969. They came on a Qantas plane with an immigration scheme. They were allowed to bring $20 as a whole family. $20. That was it. Packed up, left the small town that Dad came from, and they had $20 to start. And there were 5 people in his family. They lived in an immigration camp in Broadmeadows for 2 weeks. Then they moved into a house with another family they met on the plane coming over. My dad was the eldest of 3 boys. That family had 2 sons. 4 parents, 5 boys under the age of 13, living in a 2-bedroom house in working class suburbs in Brunswick. Where was my dad ever going to find golf? And where was he going to find his way onto a golf course so that he could then influence his daughter to play? I stepped onto a golf course in 2002 when I was 26. I took my dad to Meetung Club at Meetung, which is in in Gippsland, Eastern Gippsland, on Boxing Day this year. 62 and the first time he went onto a golf course. He plays mini golf with my niece and nephew, and they all have this competition, and they always share the scorecard on our family WhatsApp group, and there's a whole bunch of competition going on about who can beat a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old at mini golf. It's quite funny. And I'm like, yeah, good on you. Let's get out to a golf course. He's like, oh, okay. And he's got a bad back, and he had a heart attack when he was 55, and he's got early stages of emphysema. He's 62. But he's retired early, and he's living the high life down there on the beach, which is lovely. I said, all right, we're going down to play golf. None of this mini golf rubbish. We're going to get on some grass. And he's like, okay. And I said, I'll hire you a putter, and what we'll do is when I get up onto the green, that's when you start playing your shots, and that's when our competition can start. I'm happy to compete with Dad. What about the 7th hole? He was travelling okay. I said, here's my 6 iron, start hitting some balls. And anyway, we played the same hole together, and he beat me by a shot, so I got stuck in some sand, and he still brags about the fact that he beat me on the 7th that day. But I had to say to him, Dad, put a hat on so you don't get sunburnt. You need a collar, put some proper shoes on, get out of your thongs, put some proper shoes on. I was like, okay. And he had a great day. He saw an echidna on the course, and we got to walk and talk. He'd never done that before. He'd never been on a golf course before. But he didn't know how to do golf. No one had shown him. He had me to be able to show him. But we had 2 hours together walking and talking and having a hit of golf. I've never played sport with my dad ever. All the sports I've played in my whole life, I've never played sport with my dad. Never gone out and kicked the footy with him because he's got no idea. I got to play golf with my dad. We didn't play 18 holes. We didn't play in a Saturday competition. We didn't have a handicap. We didn't buy a membership. But my dad and I got to experience golf in the way it worked for us. We altered how the game could be done so that we could get into the game. My dad now said to me when I was there last week, he said, we should have another game of golf. And I'm like, great. He's never going to be a regular golfer because his back's no good and he's not very coordinated. But we can play the game in a way that suits him and the way that suits me. If I had to say to him, oh, it's going to be 5 hours, Dad, on a Saturday, and we've got to play in a competition, and there's no way in the world that golf would have had my dad. And now he's open to it. How lovely. Why? Because we chose to do it a bit differently, and there was space to do the experience differently. The experience suited his needs. So when we think about being fully inclusive, let's think about how we structure up the game so it suits the needs of the people that want to come to it, not the other way around. All right. This is the best bit of the whole strategy, I believe. It's driven by culture and leadership, hence why you're here tonight. Our leaders decide the cultural parameters and the cultural frameworks that we all exist within. Whether it's business, whether it's outside in our broader community, or whether it's in our golf clubs. Our leaders decide what's okay and what's not okay. We get to choose how progressive we want to be. We get to choose what our membership structures are going to be, our governance structures, our competition structures. We choose that, and the culture, the people in our communities will follow your lead. You are the most important people, as I said at the start. So it's driven by culture and leadership, and in that, Golf Australia has put in here that we will set and role model the standards and expectations or the example that our sport will be led by. It's not us standing up here going, oh, all your clubs need to do X, Y, and Z. It's actually us standing up and going, well, we want to see these things, but we know we have to lead those things first. We have to role model those things. We have to evolve. We need to get it right so that we can help lead you. So we are on this journey with you. We are learning as we're going. We're not going to get it right all the time. We're still learning as we go, but we're having a crack. And that's all we ask of you. We want you to have a go, have a crack. We want to empower our clubs and facilities to be more welcoming, inclusive and accessible. Remember, empowering is to give you the tools. Tonight is one of those tools. The next 3 pillars are really important as well. Grassroots participation. We're going to build some new and different ways of providing opportunities for young women and teenage girls to get into the game. If you're a 13-year-old girl and you've come out of my golf and you're not good enough to play junior pennant, what is your only option in terms of playing the game in a competition? What's your only option? Joining a club. And when do you play? Because you can't play Monday to Friday, you've got to go to school. You play when? Saturday competition. 80% of our club golfers are 55 and over. That is not a bad thing. It's great that we have such an amazing group of older people within our sport. It's really important. But is it the place that a 13-year-old girl is going to want to hang out in? Does it suit her needs? No. What's the coolest place in town to be at the moment? Oh, no, what's the coolest sport, I should say? On the beach would be nice, yes. What's the coolest sport in town at the moment? AFL. So, what I can tell you is once upon a time, 12 years ago when I first started the AFL, and you won't believe me when I say this, but football, girls playing football was so uncool. You were tarnished with a particular brush if you're a teenage girl that chose to play footy. It was very uncool, and we had to do a lot of work to rebrand what the game would be like. And we had to do a lot of work with girls and their parents. So if we can make football cool, we can make golf cool for teenage girls. But we need to provide the girls with a product, with a competition format that every other sport gives them. Every other sport you can play under 15 girls, footy, tennis, cricket, basketball, soccer, hockey. You can't do that in our sport yet, okay? So that's something that we will start to look at. How do we build age-appropriate, all-female competitions for our girls to play in, and eventually, hopefully, our boys as well. Age-appropriate sporting opportunities for our kids growing up. Really important. So they can make friends with other kids and they can bring other friends to the game as well. That's important because they will become our best recruiters. And it's a way of keeping them in the game. So stay tuned on that. We're building some new and different pilot programs and hopefully some of your clubs may be able to be involved in the future. But building a participation pathway that suits the needs of the markets we want to attract. High performance in coaching, making sure that our coaches are delivering the game in a way that suits the needs of women and girls so that first touch point you have actually speaks to who you are. Pros teach you the way you need to be taught. And finally, marketing and positioning, making sure that when people look at our game, they might come into our clubhouses, they might see us in the newspaper, they can see themselves reflected in the game and they see that women are celebrated just as much as men are. I go into some golf clubs and you walk down really big long hallways. I went to one last year at an event last year and I feel like it was probably the most wealthy piece of land I've ever stepped on foot in my whole life. And I walked into the clubhouse, there was a big long hallway and there was a whole long hallway of celebrating the men in the game in the club. A really big long hallway. And it was man, and then on the right hand side of me, women. Now granted, women probably haven't been at that club for as long because once upon a time women may not have been able to access that club. But if I'm a first timer or I'm a newcomer and I'm walking into that club and I see this much space dedicated to celebrating the contribution of women and that much space celebrating the contribution of men, what does that say to me as a first timer about where women are positioned in our culture? It says that they're worth this much space, but we spend this much space there. We have to balance that. We don't just have to demonstrate the proportion of our history, but we've got to demonstrate the value that both genders play in our game. And let's give them some space. So marketing and positioning, we have to be good at that as well. In all of our documentation that we put out, can we be culturally more representative? Do we get our gender balance right in the stories that we tell through our publications at Golf Australia? What does our web space look like? Do we celebrate women in a balanced way? We have to do that ourselves. So next time you walk into your clubhouse, when you walk out of here and you go to your clubhouse tomorrow, just check that. What would a newcomer feel like? If you bring a friend with you, just ask them, what does it feel like when you walk in? Do you see a really healthy gender balance here? Or does it feel very male-oriented, or does it feel very female-oriented? Ask that question, all right? And finally, it's a whole of sport approach. The best thing about this is not Golf Australia. This is team golf. This is all of us. Because if we don't all band together, we're in big trouble. We've got to work together on this. It's very collaborative. On our steering group, the ALPG, the PGA, Golf Management Australia, Sport Australia, the Sports Commission sit on our steering group. They're following this project really carefully and they're committing a resource to it. On top of that, every single department in Golf Australia is represented there. Sarah Chi, who's here tonight from our board, she's on that steering group. Jill Spargo, who was on our board, still chairs that. Stacey Peters is there, our CEO is there, and Kari Webb still sits on there. You want to talk about legacy pieces. You ask Kari what her legacy in the game is. Is it those 40-odd LPGA titles, and I think it's 7 majors? You guys probably know better than me. Our best golfer in Australia, what's her legacy piece? Does she want it to be about her scoreboard and what she did as a high-performance athlete? Not at all. This is what she cares about. This is the thing that she wants to leave behind in the game. She wants to make sure that the game is in a really healthy place whenever it is she leaves the game. And she's got a powerful platform, probably the most powerful, if not in the top 3 or 4 in the whole country. And she's choosing to use her platform to cultivate change at grassroots level. Kari's got your back, and she's really invested in this project. All right. So a whole of sport approach, change management capability, innovative and transformational mindset. I love that we're talking about this in golf. Innovation and transformational. If you've ever had any out there crazy, wacky ideas, you now have license to bring them to the game. I hope you've had crazy and wacky ideas. I have them all the time. All right? Because we need to keep evolving the game. And we need to do things we've never done before. It's going to take a bit of courage, and we're going to be a little bit scared along the way, but we're all in this together. It's a team golf bus, and when we get a flat tyre occasionally, we all get off the bus, we jack that bus up, we change the tyre together. We don't go walking off in our own directions. When we fix the wheel, we get back on and we start driving again, and we help each other get there. It's really important, because you know what? If we don't get it right, what do you think every other sport's going to be doing? Taking our future members. I'll talk about those teenage girls. Do you know how many girls have taken up AFL football in Victoria in the last 2 years since AFLW started? 16,000. 16,000 new girls and women have taken up the game in the last 2 years in Victoria alone. That is happening over here in South Australia. But do you know what that means? There's 16,000 girls and women that have expressed some courage. I want to try a sport I've not done before. Well, that's in winter. What do you want to do in summer? Don't come play cricket, come play golf. That's 16,000 new girls and women in Victoria, and similar over here, that you can all access now because they've got a bit of courage to do something they've not done before. That's exciting for us. 16,000 opportunities for us. So if I'm you guys, I'm getting on the phone to my local footy clubs and I'm saying, bring your girls down for a come and try date. What are they going to do over summer? Come and play golf. There's a bunch of things we wanted to be able to give you. 2 things tonight we're going to share with you. This is the first one. If you haven't gone through it, we hope you have already. But the member protection policy is a resource for clubs to help them navigate any challenges you might have or complaints from any of your members. The member protection policy calls on all of our clubs to make sure that we provide a supportive and nurturing environment for everyone associated with the game. So anytime someone walks onto your course, that your environment is supportive of them. Our childhood commitment statement is it's a really important part of our member protection policy, so you need to get your head across it. And it outlines the expected standards of behaviour, the legal and ethical rights and responsibilities, but also gives you some guidance in dealing with complaints around discrimination, harassment and abuse. So if you do have an issue where someone raises something, you can refer to this policy and it will help you understand what you can do to remedy the situation. Okay? And under Vision 2025, within the member protection policy, the things that are specific or relevant in this context, gender, pregnancy. How many of your clubs have got a maternity leave membership policy? So that when someone's pregnant, they can actually suspend their membership because they're pregnant or they've had a baby. Hands up any clubs that can do that. So we've got one club who's put their hand up. Something to consider, really important, something to consider. Because some clubs will only allow people to suspend their membership for 1 year, for one time, and it might only be for a year, but what if you have 3 children? That's really tricky, and you physically can't get on a course, okay? So that's important. Sorry?
I put my hand up for the pregnancy, but we have medical leave.
You have medical leave?
That's what the pregnancy will come under.
Fantastic, great. Breastfeeding, is a consideration in your golf clubs. Sexual orientation and transgender status would work into the member protection policy. On our website, this will be emailed out to all of you tomorrow, this presentation, and this link will be in there. It's live. You can click on it. Hopefully all of you have seen it anyway. What we ask or encourage you to do, strongly encourage you to do, is to read it, adopt it, and then you embed the practices, embed the member protection policy into your club practices, okay? It's a really good resource to support you. Remember, empowering you, giving you the tools you need. So why are we doing Vision 2025? We know, I'm probably going to, a little bit of this you'll be familiar with, but we're going to drill down a little bit more into what's really happening in our golfing community. We know that 20% of our we're being a little bit generous, it's just under 20, we round up a little bit. We know that 20% of our club members are female. We know that 80% of our club members are 55 and over. We also know we've got 400 club members and 400,000 club members, and we also have 800,000 social players. That's 800,000 people that we could be moving over to golf, to club membership, okay? This last one here is the one that stresses me the most though. The average age of a female club golfer is 8 years older than that of a man, and it's 64. And it's trending upwards, it's not trending downwards. So at a time when we need to be replacing the members that we lose at one end, we need to be replacing them at, probably 2 for 1. We're not even replacing them at 1 for 1, okay? Because girls and women, for some reason, aren't seeing themselves in the game. We've got to find out how to do it differently. So let's talk about this. Declining participation and ageing female participation rate. We've never had more challenges attracting women and girls to the game. This is the most competitive marketplace we've ever been in for female sporting participants that we've ever seen in Australia, and probably around the world. How golf is played hasn't changed. You think about in 1970 when our female club membership was at 34%. 1 out of every 3 golfers was female in 1970. Some of you probably playing in our golf clubs in 1970, and you can probably remember that. And you've probably watched female participation dwindle over the years. But 49 years ago, our female club membership was 1 in 3. Now what happened in the 70s? We got Gough Whitlam. We got no-fault divorce. We got single mother's pension. We got free access to education. And that significantly affected the lives of women and girls. Why? It gave them access to university for the first time without finance being a barrier to participation in education. So we also had a women's liberation movement in the 70s as well. Post-60s, some of you were in the 60s and created that. And so we ended up in this cultural change time, this decade of amazing cultural change for women in the 70s, which meant women went to work, or they stayed in the workforce for longer, and they balanced families and children and work. Our lives changed massively. Our gender role expectations changed massively. We were freer to do things that we weren't allowed to do in the past. So of course, when we talk about being time poor, golf started to struggle to find a way into our lives. So in the 49 years since we had that 34% female member participation, that has gone down. The lives of women have changed massively in that time, but how do we do golf? We still do it as we did it in 1970, don't we? Saturday competition, 18 holes, competition golf, golf club memberships, handicaps. Women play mostly midweek, men still play mostly on Saturdays. And we're wondering why women aren't, our membership isn't where it used to be. Maybe golf also has to change and evolve so we can retain more women in the game and bring them back to the game. The cost of living. You want to buy a house these days, you're going to have a 20% deposit on a $500,000 house. There's $100,000, $25,000 in stamp duty and overheads. You need $125,000 before you can buy an apartment in Melbourne or a house. $125,000. University graduates come out, say 22 these days. Their HECS debts are much bigger now. You might end up with an $80,000 HECS debt when you leave university. There's a $100 to $200 a month payment you pay back for your education, probably for a long time in your life. In Victoria, Vic Health released some megatrend health data about 2 years ago, and what they talked about was this shifting employment insecurity. The average time it takes for a university graduate to find long-term, full-time, secure, ongoing employment in the field that they've studied, the average number of years it takes to find that, average, is 5 years. That means you're 27 when you are starting your financial journey. And you have to save $125,000 for a house. And on top of that, what are you probably doing when you're 27-ish? Maybe getting married, maybe having children, maybe travelling, maybe trying to buy a house. And if I've got $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 for a golf club membership, I'm probably not putting it in there, am I, right now? I'm probably going to wait till I've got some freedom in my life to do that. And then we all wonder, well, why haven't I got young members? Because life's really different from when we were younger and when many of our members were younger. 80% of our golf club members, remember, are 55 and over. When they started their financial journeys, it's probably very different to what people today are doing when they start their financial journeys. So it's about empathy. It's about understanding the experiences of young people. And if we want them in our golf clubs, we have to structure up the game physically and financially so that they can get into the game in the way that suits their needs and their lifestyles. And you know what? If we do that and we just keep them in the game in a way that suits their needs, what happens when they're 55 and choose to retire? What do you reckon they'll do? They'll stay in the game and they'll be a fully fledged, paid up, whole shebang, 7-day member playing 18-hole competition golf. Hopefully not on a Saturday. Hopefully it's a bit mixed up. All right? But we need to think about the needs of our future membership. Changing structure of family and community. There are a lot of men now who don't want to spend 5 hours away from their family on a Saturday. But I reckon if you offered a bit more 9-hole competition golf on a Saturday, they'd balance it. Okay, I can do 2 hours for me on the course and I'll spend the morning with my kids going to their sport or with my family or helping around the house. Single dads, a lot of single dads now. You know, want to take ownership over their time with their children, absolutely. And we have the most competitive female sporting landscape we've ever had. We are a country that's a desert and we have a national professional women's ice hockey league. There is so much choice. And I bet for many of the women in the room, when you were choosing your sports as a kid, you probably only had access to 5 or 6 sports that it was okay for women to play in. Now you can choose anything. You can play anything you want. So we are at our hardest position in the most competitive marketplace we've ever seen in the country. So we have to do things differently, don't we? And finally, we have a really short domestic elite season. We've just had it. Adelaide gets to host half of it. How awesome is that? But it's 2 weeks in the whole calendar. Minjee Lee's world number 3, possibly going to be world number 2 very shortly, we hope, and then some. But when does she play her golf? 2 o'clock in the middle of the night on pay TV over in the US. Meanwhile, Alyssa Healy plays in the World Cup in November, gets off a plane from the Caribbean, flies straight in to Australia, and she jumps into a WBBL outfit and she's on our TVs, primetime TV, for the next 3 months. We've got AFLW at the moment. We've had WNBL. Adelaide Lightning did a terrific job in the basketball this year. Fantastic. But these are on primetime TV. We do not have an elite domestic season that gets mainstream TV cut through like that. So if we're relying on the likes of Minjee and Adam Scott and co to be the inspiration for your children growing up, it's going to be really hard for us because they don't get to see them. But who is our inspiration in our golf community? Do you know who's going to inspire our kids to get involved in the game? You. You are the inspiration that we have in our game. Why? Because you lead our sport. You lead our clubs to make change. You lead our clubs to evolve. You lead our sport to evolve to suit the needs of the people that we need to get. You are our inspiration. Hope you're feeling excited by that. I am. So I'm going to share a little bit of research with you. I'm going to email this full report out to you. I'm not going to go through this in detail tonight because I'm very conscious that I do want to get through the Human Rights Commission guidelines in some detail with you tonight. All right? But I do want to share some research with you that I think is really relevant. Syngenta is an agricultural grass, turf management company, and they do a bunch of different research. Obviously, if there are more women playing golf, it's good for them because they sell more grass and more grass-caring things. But they've done some pretty fantastic research. This study was done with thousands of women from 8 countries all around the world. One of them was Australia. There's some really good Australian-specific data that will be in that report when I share it with you. But they've come up with some really interesting stats for us that I think we need to pay attention to. What would encourage women to play more golf? 37% said the game was more affordable, better weather, game took less time. 15% said if I could see improvement in my game. 11% said I'd probably play more golf too. 11% said less expensive instruction and coaching. 9-hole green fee, course conditions. My children were able to play golf with me. I've highlighted 3 of these though, because golf's a funny game. To work out if it's fun, you have to have some level of competence, don't you? But to get competent, you've got to have some coaching, which you've got to spend a bit of cash, don't you? So you want me to spend a whole bunch of money to work out if I'm competent, to work out if the game's fun. It's kind of backwards. So the financial cost of working out whether you like the game may be a barrier. And if you look at these 3 things that I've underlined, if the game was more affordable, I'd have less expensive instruction and coaching. And then what would happen? I'd see an improvement in my game, wouldn't I? And it's cyclical. So how can we do it differently? How can we do our financial models differently? How can we make it more affordable so people can get into the game easier and they can get competent sooner and they can work out if they like the game? Of all of these things, I think there's a lot of this stuff that we can influence through our leadership and how we choose to lead. We can influence how affordable the game is. We can influence the time it takes to play. We can influence the improvement that people can see in their game. We can influence our spouses playing with us or being able to play with us. We can influence relaxed dress codes. We can influence play more, save more. We can influence less expensive instruction and coaching. We can influence how affordable new equipment was. We can influence whether or not there's a green fee at your clubs or your courses. And we can influence how welcome our children feel when they're out on the course with us. We can influence so much of that. So it's we talked before about some stats. It's a bit stressful, isn't it? But I feel like we've got so much control. We have so much control over what we choose to do next. There are so many ways that we can influence what happens with our game. Why do women leave golf? 30% overall cost of the game, 30% say family responsibilities, 27% time it takes to play, work commitments and the like. Non-retained women, women who tried the game and gave up after 2 or 3 times, 37% overall cost of the game. 30%, the game was not fun, probably because they weren't competent yet. 26% said the time it takes to play. What would encourage women to play more golf or to try golf? 74% said free golf mornings and give golf a try. And this one's interesting, 67%, 2 out of every 3 women surveyed, easy access to affordable lessons. This is global data. This is what women all around the world are telling us. Lots of them. So we have a choice whether or not we listen to that or not. Again, as I said, I'll email this out to you so you've got access to this. And you can read this full report. It's really interesting. But it gives us some ideas about where we need to be paying it, what we need, which directions we need to be going in if we want to start to do some new and different things. All right. We're going to talk about the Human Rights Commission, the Australian Human Rights Commission guidelines that were released on Tuesday. Hands up if you've read them online. Great. Fantastic. I think it's about 44 pages thereabouts. There are some really good case studies in there. I want to preface this part of the presentation tonight by saying I'm not going to answer any questions on individual case-by-case situations in your clubs. Why? Because our clubs are also different. I think the practices are all quite nuanced and contextual. And I think we don't have time to go through every single club's practices to work out whether or not you're meeting the Australian Human Rights Commission guidelines or not. Okay? So I'm just going to preface that with, if you ask me a question around that, I'm not going to be able to answer those for you tonight. But I will be able to give you some instruction on where to go if you are concerned about any of your club practices being in line with the law. Okay? They look like that? The background to this, the guidelines obviously been produced by the Australian Human Rights Commission with us, in partnership with us, and they provide direction to all of you in your golf clubs about how our golf operational practices are treated by the Sex Discrimination Act, the Federal Sex Discrimination Act, which was brought into being in 1984. This law is 35 years old. So we don't have a short amount of, a long amount of time to sort of start to slowly morph into where we need to be. We've had that. We've had 35 years. Okay? So now that these guidelines have been released, there's a fair bit of media attention on this, We know that some journalists are really wanting to point the finger at the sport or point the finger at certain clubs. Okay? So the important thing is that you don't put your head in the sand around this. You read this and you fully understand the implications of it and how it relates to your club practices. That's super important. It's good risk management. Good governance is avoiding risk. Good leadership is making sure that your club is adhering to the law. Okay. So it's owned by the Commission, it's not owned by us, but it's endorsed by us and the RNA. The RNA have had eyes on this the whole way through. They're very interested in what we're doing here. And we approached the Human Rights Commission in 2017 when we realised there was a gap between what the law said and the guidance that we could provide clubs for the nuanced ways in which golf clubs operate. So we strongly encourage you to work through the publication. I reckon you do it as a committee, a board, at your boards or at your committee level, and then follow the guidance from the Commission. If you don't follow the guidance, you're putting yourselves at risk. So when in doubt, if you're unsure, if you're working through things and I don't know if that's quite right, if you can be seen to be maximising the inclusion of women and girls, then you should be travelling okay. But if you are unsure, go and seek legal advice. Okay. And it's also important to note that this is how it relates to the Federal Sex Discrimination Act. Every single state and territory has state-based equal opportunity laws. So you need to make sure that your club is in line with state-based laws as well. All right? We're responsible to 2 sets of laws. The development of guidelines has been informed by a really big consultation process that probably took about 7 or 8 months. There are over 10 roundtable discussions in both Sydney and Melbourne, but every single state was represented. We had all of our state bodies involved, obviously us, plus the ALPG, PGA, GMA were involved. We had regional and metropolitan representation, our district associations involved, plus certain individuals within the golfing community. So it's been a really extensive consultation process. On top of that, the draft guidelines that were sent out to us, I think in October, they've been reviewed by a number of people across the industry. And then feedback was offered to the Commission on that. All right, so there's been a huge consultation process and the whole of the sport has put these together essentially through that consultation process. So legal responsibility, what is your legal responsibility in relation to golf? Who is responsible for discrimination under the Act? An individual or an organisation who discriminates against an individual can be held liable. So not just the organisation, but the individuals as well. And golf clubs, of course, have a level of legal responsibility under the Act. Important to note here that a golf club can be liable for the actions of its employees or agents when the actions amount to unlawful discrimination. So if you have a subcontracted golf professional and you guys are all above board with how you run your club, but the golf professional acts in a certain way, you are potentially liable as well. So it's important to bring any of your staff that you engage or your subcontractors that you engage. It's important to bring them into some of these discussions as well and educate them on these things as well. What does a publication cover? There's going to be a bunch of sort of questions here that I'll share with you later on that have come out of that are in the guidelines. We're not going to answer them tonight, but I want you to think about them over your head as we go through. I want you to mull over them. The publication will apply to 4 areas of our club and our club practices: membership and membership categories, course access and competition structures, including booking times, booking systems and premium times such as Saturdays. We're going to look at governance, so board participation and also the operation of women's committees, as well as single-sex competitions. And as I said earlier, it's really important to understand that golf is very complex and there's so many different scenarios in the game, so it creates a lot of legal complexity. So it's not really that easy to give you, this is one answer for this situation that's going to cover everyone. And they do not cover workplace discrimination. That is, for any of your staff, that is covered off by something else, okay, by different legislation. So what does the publication cover? Does it provide absolute clarity on how the law applies to golf? No, it does not. The Sex Discrimination Act is a general law that applies to a specific area of public life, but it's not detailed to the extent of talking about things in golf such as tee times and course access and the like. And if we attempted to cover every single situation in golf, we'd have a document that was enormous. It would be War and Peace. Absolutely it would be. It's important to remember that, that in addition to the general nature of the law, the courts have definitely not considered all of these issues. So you could end up with a complaint that ends up in the court, and it would, then we would know how that law would be interpreted. But you don't want to end up in front of a court. And as a result, the legislation itself does not provide clarity, the clarity that we would all find ideal in our circumstances. So, you know, if in doubt, maximise participation. Can the best lawyers provide absolute clarity on how the law applies to golf? No, they can't. Only a senior court can, generally federal or high court, that can make a ruling that will serve as a legal precedent. And so even the best lawyers without any legal precedent can only provide you with advice, okay, on how they think a court will rule in a certain situation. So we also encourage you to not rely on previous court findings. This is an interesting one, and this is the one that's probably going to have people talking a little bit. We're going to talk through this tonight, and this is around the concept of special measures and what are the implications for our women's committees and our single-sex competitions and the like. But we have to understand what special measures are and why these things are part of the law. So as set out in the Act, it's unlawful to discriminate on the basis of sex in golf unless the different treatment amounts to a special measure. So in other words, some kind of positive discrimination, or you might have heard affirmative action before, okay, or an exemption applies. What is a special measure? A special measure is to be taken for the purpose of achieving substantive equality between women and men. It's a positive action used to promote equality for disadvantaged groups. And they often, as I said, they often refer to it as positive discrimination or affirmative action. The purpose or the point of a special measure is to address the unequal position of two groups of people by implementing a practice favouring the disadvantaged group. Essentially, we need to put something special in place to catch up the group that is underrepresented, catch them up, and then we can treat everyone the same. But until we catch them up, if we keep treating everyone the same, that gap's going to remain. So we have to put some extra things in place to catch up female participation in the game. So we're thereabouts, nearing 50-50, 40-60, somewhere along there maybe. But when we've got 20-80, there's a significant disproportionate representation of women and men in the game. So you can put things in place that amount to a special measure designed to attract and retain women in the game. Because if we don't, we're going to lose them, okay? The special measures provision in the Act provide you with the opportunity to offer incentives that are designed to address this imbalance. So if you've got some great idea that's designed to bring more women to the club, fine, that's okay. And so here are some examples that the Commission has provided for us, and if you go through the document, there are some really terrific case studies, and they include some of these things. Reserving a number of board or management committee positions for women on your board. There are many organisations that do that already. In Victoria, the state government has required that all state sporting organisations have 40% female representation on their board. It's mandatory by June 30. And if we don't have any access to state government funding. It's compulsory. So we have to work out a way of making sure we've got 40% female representation on our boards. At a national level, Golf Australia has to achieve that by the end of the year. Must have 40% female representation on our boards. Otherwise, we don't get any funding. And we need that funding so we can support the game. So we have to do that. So reserving a number of positions on our boards to make sure that women are represented accordingly on our leadership committees. Establishing a women-only committee to create an inclusive space for women in the club and to increase the number of women members at the club. So this is really interesting. We're not going to go into massive detail tonight around women's committees, but it does start to give us some advice or guidance on how we need to position our women's committees. Okay. So women's committee needs to have as part of its objectives, okay, its purpose needs to be about creating a more inclusive space for women and girls, that women feel more nurtured, welcomed, included, and to increase female participation in the game. It's not a women's committee to run women's competitions, because match committee can run competitions. But our women's committees need to have an element of their purpose to be about increasing female participation, increasing or improving the experience of women in the game, and retaining women in the game. Okay, women's committees need to have that as part of their purpose. All right, it's really important. Offering reduced fees for new women members or waiving introductory fees and charges. Holding training sessions for new, so if you want to run an all-women's clinic, that would be okay. It's a special measure. You're not discriminating against any men. It's a special measure designed to attract more women to the game. Holding competitions for women only. That is an okay thing, okay? Could be deemed to be a special measure. And allocating a particular day of the week in the playing schedule for women only. That is deemed to be a special measure, okay? We know that the handicap system, as we play with, we know that that addresses the physical differences between the genders, but what we know it doesn't address are the differences between the socio-political, historical differences between the genders. Remember, the way in which sport plays a role in our lives is really different according to the gender we're a part of, or that we are. So for boys and men growing up, playing sport's a birthright, isn't it? But for girls and women, it's been a little bit more complex. It's been a bit trickier for us to get into sport. We hear all the time, girls aren't any good at sport. You throw like a girl, it's always an insult. Or you hit like a girl, or you, kick like a girl. Okay, it's always used as an insult. We're always told that we're not very good at it, and so we lack a lot of confidence when it comes to the game. And so, whilst our handicap system does address the physical differences between the genders, yes, men are bigger and stronger and taller, biologically, absolutely. But the handicap system doesn't address those social, political, historical differences between the genders. And so running a women's only competition might provide a woman or women with a space that feels psychologically more comfortable for her as she's entering the game. And that's okay, because it's designed as a special measure to try and keep her and make her feel supported in the game. So how do you minimise the risk of getting of a discrimination claim being successful? You read through the guidelines. Section 6 will cover this off. It'll provide you with some guidelines how to minimise your club's legal risk in this area. And it's presented as a checklist, so I think it's pretty helpful. You can just kind of do checkbox. You can work through it together as a committee, which I really like. We strongly encourage you to do this. I'd be doing this at my next committee meeting if I was any of you, and go through those checklist items. And if you try and conform naturally with the Act, you'll probably be operating practices that promote equal opportunity for women and girls in golf. Okay, you'll be doing it anyway. All right. There are 4 areas that we need golf clubs to manage. We need to ensure that membership categories are gender neutral. We need to provide open access to the course at all times for women and girls and boys and men. Maximise participation of women and girls. We need to maximise the participation of women and girls in competitions. And we also need to facilitate the inclusion of women and girls in governance arrangements. So there's one club that I do some work with in another state where women can become 7-day members. They can't play on a Saturday, however, at all. Yep. Women, but 6-day members can vote in elections, but only 7-day members can stand for the board, and you have to be a 7-day member for 5 years to stand for the board. So we're doing some work with that club. So making sure that your practices within your club governance structures, how people access leadership roles in the club, you need to make sure that people genuinely, actually, really have access to getting into that pathway. So yes, technically, officially on paper, women can be a board member at their club, but they've got to pay for a day they can't play on for 7 years and then hope that when they get nominated, someone's going to second it and support them in that, okay? So make sure you're not doing that. So membership categories, these are some of the checklist items. I'm going to go through these now with you. They're positioned as questions. I'm not asking you for answers to speak out loud. What I am saying is ask these questions yourselves in your head. You can do that now, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, in your heads though, quietly. And then take this back to your clubs, all right? Work through these questions with your committees. So are your membership categories gender neutral? Are there any other factors connected with your club's membership categories, such as the playing schedule or provisions of the club constitution, which affect the ability of women and girls to fully enjoy full membership? Course access. Do women and girls and boys and men have open access to the course on all days throughout the week? Now this matter has not been tested in the federal court, so there's no legal certainty on this point. On the basis of these of the guidance, however, that GA's got, we believe there is notable risk associated with quarantining time for men only. We think that there's a risk in doing that, a legal risk in doing that. Okay. If clubs wish to quarantine times and take on the legal risk that goes with that, they should consider seeking their own legal advice. All right? Can women and girls and boys and men play socially and in competitions on Saturdays? If there is a practical need to limit access to the court, is this access limited based on a criterion other than sex? Does the booking system provide all members who hold the same type of day-based membership with the same access to time slots for booking? So in some clubs, for instance, the Saturday booking times open up for men a couple of days earlier than they might for women. Okay? So we need to make sure that everyone's got access at all times to getting on course. The question was, we can have a separate day for women to be able to play on an all-female day, but not necessarily for men. We believe that there is some legal risk in quarantining some time for men based on the guidance and the guidelines. And again, it takes it back to special measures. It's about being able to provide an opportunity for women to play together as a way of trying to redress the imbalance, the significant imbalance that exists in our game between women and men. So giving men access to an all-male experience on the course, which happens a lot anyway because men vastly outnumber women, they can have pretty much an all-male experience thereabouts anyway, but women really can't do that. And for women to feel safe and supported and included, especially new women, they might want an all-female experience when they play the game, and that might help keep more women in the game and attract more women to the game. If we don't offer that as a special measure, what we might end up with is women leaving the game and that 80-20 becoming 10-90 and even worse potentially. So I know it seems like it's unfair in reverse. However, the law allows clubs to provide positive discrimination to try and address the imbalance that exists between gendered representation in our golf club community. Okay? Because not providing men with an all-male day to play on is not going to dissuade men from being involved in golf. But potentially not giving women an all-female experience in the game might dissuade them from joining the sport and make the imbalance even worse. Have you considered around course access? Have you considered allocating a large block of time slots exclusively to women on a specific day? We've spoken about that as a special measure. Do you have extra time slots in the booking system allocated to women and girls? So what you might do on a Saturday, for instance, in the Saturday days play, you might have one tea time every hour where it's a gender-neutral competition, everyone can play. But to make sure that women might feel a bit more comfortable that they're having an all-female experience in the game, you have a tea time maybe once every hour where if you as a woman want to play in an all-female grouping, you can sign up on that dedicated female tea time. Doesn't mean that men can't play, it just means that women have the choice to play amongst other women, and that might be deemed to be a special measure designed to make the experience that women have a bit more female-friendly for them as they get into the game. The last two there, 7 and 8, that I just spoke about, these two here, they're practical measures that promote equal opportunity for women and girls in golf. And they're made possible by the special measures provision. And it's important you understand and try and get your head around whether or not something can be deemed a special measure. Really focusing on what the purpose of a special measure is. These measures recognise that women and girls feel more comfortable participating in an environment restricted to players of their own age or sex potentially. Okay. So to address that, as I said, to address that 80-20 imbalance, it's important to consider pragmatic approaches and special measures, all female experiences in the game. Remember at the start I talked about Vision 2025. The vision is about making sure it's about how well we do golf, how well we position the game for the needs of women and girls as well as boys and men, but how well we position the game for the needs of our future market, our future participants. That's really important. So let's look at some pragmatic approaches to being able to address that, and that's what special measures actually allow us to do. Competitions. Have you considered ways to maximise the participation of women and girls in competitions? Some examples of how you might do that: increasing the number of mixed competitions, holding women-only or girl-only competitions, arranging net competitions based on a criterion other than sex. Okay, so you might have, handicapping, your handicap's got to be under 20 or under 10 or whatever it might be, and have developmentally staggered competitions. That is okay, all right? But it can't be based on sex. All right? Providing access to competitions for both men and women throughout the week. For example, not limiting women's competitions to weekdays only. We're working with a club at the moment in Victoria where the Women's Committee, in fact, have said that a woman can't play in their women's club championship because she can't play midweek. She's working, and she's asked to be able to play her round on the Saturday, and then her score to contribute to the women's club championship. And the Women's Committee have said no, that's not going to cut it. But the Saturday competition, club championship on the same weekend, is for men. And so the club has got a responsibility to allow that woman to play in a club championship. So how does she do it? Do you allow her to play in the Saturday competition that becomes a Saturday club championship? Or can you give her the opportunity to play in that men's club championship? Or can she play her round on the Saturday and then contributes to the Wednesday women's club championship? All right. So it's an interesting situation. And we have some situations where in fact, it's women that are making it hard for women to get into the game or stay in the game. So we have to keep ourselves honest on that one as well. I think it's important. So if you're relying on the competitive sporting activity exemption in the Act, have you taken into account all of the relevant factors? And have you adopted a fair and robust decision-making process? So on this point, this competitive sporting activity exemption, the provision of the Act permits discrimination in a competition where size, strength and stamina and physique of the competitors is relevant. Now, GA believes that the handicap system at community golf, that the handicap system element of golf eliminates these considerations in net competitions because the calculation around handicap, etc., has a gendered formula in there. So size and strength and stamina at an amateur level, at our level of golf, shouldn't be a factor for us because we have the handicapping system. Okay. What we can say though is that although the interaction of the handicap and this exemption have not been considered by federal courts, okay, so that's something again that's not been tested, all right. But it is something to consider that we believe the handicap system does overcome any exemption that's needed to account for size, strength and stamina. Okay. Still on competitions here, are women and girls and boys and men awarded the same prizes or prizes of equal value, or at the very least proportionate in competitions? Did anyone see what happened last year in surfing, where there was a couple of kids up on a big kind of winner's dice and they had these huge checks? And it said, like, you know, they were like, oh, how good are our new champions for this event that we had? And they were like, oh no, under 15 or under 18 kids. And there was the male winner and the female winner, and the boy had a check for his $800, and the female winner had a check for her $400. And everyone on social media went, that is so not okay. What's happened with the World Surfing League now? What have they committed to? Pay parity. All of their events, World Surfing League events now, complete pay parity. A bit like the Vic Open, except all of their events, not just one like we have in our sport. All right? So men and women will get paid equally, and that's been led by the athletes in that sport, in fact. Pretty amazing. So from this year onwards, surfers are getting paid exactly the same. So what do we do in our own clubs? Do we have equal prize money for our men and our women and our boys and our girls? Do we pay boys and girls in golf? All right. Governance. Are all club members, regardless of their membership category, able to vote at the AGM? Are all club members, regardless of their membership category, able to nominate for a position on the club's board of management? I spoke about it as an example before. And if only 7-day or full members are able to vote at the AGM and nominate for the board of management, are women and girls able to fully enjoy the benefits of this type of membership? And are a number of board or management committee positions reserved for women and girls? Now, constitutionally, that might be a bit tricky for you at the moment, but it could be a constitutional amendment that you put in place. Some clubs have certainly put in place things that allow them to make sure that they can get more female representation. So at some clubs, in sporting clubs in general, you might have 9 people that sit on your board. 6 of them might be elected from your membership group, and 3 positions constitutionally might be appointments from people beyond your membership, because you're trying to get a particular skill set involved in your club. Or you might want to see to get more women involved. You might not be able to get women from your club to sit on boards for whatever reason. And if you've got the ability to make appointments to your boards rather than vote them in through your membership, you might be able to get women external to your club to come and sit on your boards as well. So it's a strategy that some clubs have used to get more diverse representation on their club boards. Okay, skill set, life experience, all different walks of life, and certainly gender. Okay. Do you have a committee to promote and support the participation of women and girls at the club? For example, a women's committee. Now, can you see how that's been written? Okay, around what's the objective around this? It should not generally be regarded as an alternative to participation in the club's central governance. So when sometimes clubs might say, well, we don't have any women on our club board, that's okay, we've got a women's committee. The club board oversees the running of the whole club, and so women need to be sufficiently represented in that space. That's important for good governance. Okay. Whether a specific women's committee is permitted under the Act as a special measure will depend on its particular objectives and activities. Remember what I said before about the purpose of a women's committee. More likely, it's deemed to be a special measure if one or more of its objectives or activities are focused on achieving substantive equality. So if all your women's committee does is run women's competition on a Tuesday or Wednesday, that means it may not be deemed a special measure. However, if your women's committee is designed and its purpose is to implement, a female recruitment strategy and its purpose is designed to attract and retain women in the game, then it could be deemed a special measure. Okay. Importantly, around this, we are developing a template, a set of guidance for clubs, a particular template that will help you understand how to position some of these special measures or these pragmatic scenarios that we've spoken about tonight, all right, around special measures, particularly around women's committees and the like. Number 17, still around governance. Do you have policies and processes in place which align with the anti-discrimination statements and complaints procedures as outlined in our member protection policy? You need to start having these things in terms of your rules and your bylaws within your club. Okay, policies and processes that make sure gender equality is front and centre. What we're doing around these guidelines, so that as we already I've had some clubs call me this week and said, look, we think we're doing pretty well. Some clubs have called me and said we're not doing very well. We've got some challenges. We've got a central contact for all of you, and that's Paul Vardy. We will email you this document, so don't worry about scribbling his details down. But so Paul is our designated contact point, and he will certainly be able to direct you. He'll probably direct you straight back here to our staff here at Golf Australia and SA through Matt and Christian. But certainly we have got people in place. Remember what I said at the start of the night? We are the national sporting organisation. Our responsibility is to serve and support you, and you are not alone in this. And remember, this is the law. This is not us saying you have to do all of these things. This is a law. Our job is to support our clubs, to help you align yourselves with the law so you minimise the risk of any legal intervention. Okay? So speak to us. If you think you're in trouble or you think you've got some challenges and you can't navigate your way out of it and you do need some help, please connect with us, because that's what our job is. That's what we're here for. You're not on your own. Okay. Excellent. A lot of legal speak. It's all very serious. All right. So we've given you a whole bunch of stuff, and we could send you out on your own and say, rightio, off you go and try and work it out for yourselves. But our job, again, is to serve and support you and give you some ideas on to help you move forward. So obviously this is us. There's about 90 of us at Golf Australia. We're 90 people. There's 25 million people in this country. So 90 people being able to influence the rest of the country is a bit tricky. We have our stakeholders around us, so PGA, ALPG, etc. There's a few hundred of them, and then some. But our clubs, they're 1,500 in number. There are 400,000 club members in Australia. 400,000 of you. That's you guys here on the outside. You're the most influential people in our sport. As I said at the start of the night, you get to choose what our future will be. So we're going to give you some strategies now to help you get there. There are 4 key steps. Don't worry about scribbling stuff down. Again, I told you I'll email this out to you. The first thing we need from you, or if you want to come down this path with us and join us on this Vision 2025 journey that we're all on, there are 4 things we'd love you to start doing. The first step is to lead. Everything starts with leadership decision. Attitude reflects from leadership, remember? First thing is, start a conversation, start discussing this, talk about it. When you leave here tonight, I know some of you have got a long drive home. I know someone's here like from a 6-hour trip away at Port Lincoln, is that right? Someone's from very far away, fantastic. Someone said it was a long way away, and I was like, yes, that's pretty great effort. Got a fair bit of time to drive home. Get on the phone and start speaking to your people from your club. Start discussing the Vision 2025 strategies and the opportunities that you have at a board level to cultivate change. At your next board meeting, get it on the agenda, start the conversation. Commit. Once you're at that next board meeting, make an official commitment. Minutes it in your minutes. So that 100 years' time and people are loving the fact that your club is healthy and thriving and there's men and women everywhere, young and old. They look back at those minutes and they go, oh, that happened back in 2019. It all started from that committee. That committee changed the future of our club. And we have this today because they made a difference back then. Minutes it, make it official. Leadership, and then make a leadership statement. Release it internally and externally. If a tree falls in the forest and no one hears it, did it even happen? May as well not even have done it. So make sure you tell the world what you're doing and they'll follow you. All right? So release it internally and release it externally. Write up a little article in the newspaper. Send them a photograph. They'll love that. All right? They'll pop it in the local paper. Journalists in regional areas and certainly in suburban areas love it when you do the work for them. It's fantastic. All right? So send it on. There's a good storytelling piece around here. This club is committing to the Vision 2025 strategy, a national strategy that falls in line with the global agenda around redressing the imbalance of women in golf. Fantastic. What a great story for your club. Super. Second thing you need to do is kind of like your pre-season. Plan and organise. Get everything ready so that you can execute. All right? So what we want you to do, establish a Vision 2025 working party. Great idea to get new people involved in leadership and governance at your club. People that might be a bit wary about joining the board, but I'm happy to work on a project. I don't want to work on leading the club, but I'm happy to work on a project. And make your working party, let it consist of people that are general members as well as board members, and a balance of male and female, and try and encourage younger people as well as some of the older people, so it's really representative of everyone at your club. Because this is not a women's issue, this is everyone's issue. This is a club health issue, this is a culture issue, we all own culture. And men and women both contribute to what our culture is like. And we need the great men in our sport to come with us on the journey, and we need women to walk right alongside them, work collaboratively together with them. All right, so this is all of us doing this together. So working party, establish a working party, nominate someone from your working party to become our nominee or our delegate, I guess, the person that we can communicate through, that we can help and support, and the person that can reach out to us if they need some help. And in that, do a review of your club. Those 4 key pillars in the Vision 2025 strategy that I spoke about earlier. Remember what they were. Culture and leadership, grassroots participation, high performance and coaching, and marketing and positioning. Review those 4 areas of your club. What are we doing really well at? And where can we see some opportunities to get even better? Where are the areas where we can still grow and develop? And once you've reviewed those things, we want you to identify 4 things. We only ask that you identify 4 things that you can implement this year. If you want to be really comprehensive, start setting middle and short and long-term goals, but essentially 4 things that you can tick off in 12 months. If there are 1,500 clubs in our country and every club commits to doing 4 things to address the gender imbalance of women in our clubs, that's 6,000 things we're doing that we weren't doing 12 months ago. Surely we're going to get some gains, and we start the momentum with that. Okay? So we're just asking you to do 4 things. 4 things. And when you identify those 4 things, start to map them out. Who's going to do them? When are they going to be done by? What resources do you need? What will you actually do? And when will it be done by? Then the next bit, this is the fun bit. This is where you just go and do it. This is the seasonal stuff. You've done your pre-season, all the hard work. You've organised everything. Now we just take action. We implement our action plan, our Vision 2025 action plan. Those 4 things you said you're going to do, go and do those 4 things. The next thing in that, monitor it. Don't just let them go and then, okay, well, in 12 months we'll see what happened. You've got to keep your eyes over them. How do you do that? Your working party meeting monthly, just to check in and see how things are ticking over, making sure that things are rolling out as you were hoping. And then on top of that, at your board meetings, making sure that Vision 2025 is a compulsory part of your board meeting agendas every month or every time you meet. Making sure, how are we going on Vision 2025? That board member that sits on your Vision 2025 working party, that board member reporting and being that conduit between those 2 bodies in your clubs. Okay? And just checking in, because you don't want to be the club president or the women's president, and you're out on the tee, and then one of your general members says to you, oh, the Vision 2025 strategy, I saw this thing that you're doing, and the president going, oh, I've got no idea what you're talking about. So if you're the president, remember, you need to stay informed. How do you stay informed? You make sure there's a really clear and official line of communication between your working party and your board, okay? The last bit, communicate. Report what you're learning about yourselves and what you're learning about different strategies to your district boards, if you have them, and also to your state body. Matt, when he comes out to your clubs, talk with Matt about what you're doing, what's working, where are you getting stuck. We're going to put a link out later on in the year where clubs that are doing this work, where they can actually go online and tell us what's happening, what are you doing that's working really well. We can talk a lot about what's not working, but also we want to celebrate your successes. But from talking about your successes and sharing those with us, we can feed those onto someone else. Why did you think I wanted you to make a new friend tonight? Because the club next to you that you spoke to tonight might have the answer to the challenge that you've got, and vice versa. We have to make friends with each other and help each other along here. So you can call up the club down the road and say, we really got stuck with this women's clinic thing, it didn't work out. This is what we did. You got any ideas why? Oh yeah, we had a similar challenge. We overcame it by doing X, Y, and Z. Work together with this. And lastly, if you get stuck, seek help. Give our South Australian staff a call. Speak to Matt, speak to Christian. Touch base with me. You are not on your own in this piece of work. We are all working together on this. Like I said, there's massive investment globally around this. Not on your own. You're part of a huge, big global movement in this space. And we're really excited to be doing this work with you. Okay? So seek help. Don't just go, oh, it just got too hard. We're just trying to get the course going. We're trying to make the competition happen and we haven't got time for that. Commit. When you commit to something, commit to it. And if it gets hard, get on the phone. Okay? And that's the 4-part process we want you to take. Lead, plan and organise, take action, and then communicate. Pretty simple. All right? If you want to build an action plan, we've put a matrix here to give you some idea, but don't worry about 3 and 5 years too much. We'd just love to see one action in each of those 4 key pillars. Okay? So we've given you some ideas. Here's something we prepared earlier for you. Here are some key actions you can walk out of this, and you don't have to do any of these. You can come up with your own if you want to. That's fine. We just wanted to get some ideas out into the golf community, so you've got somewhere to start from. So establish a working party, commit to Vision 2025, identify a list of women within the club and potentially outside of the club that you could engage to be part of the working party or on your board, that you can work with and prep and pipeline into a position of leadership. Review your club constitution to ensure it's consistent with the Human Rights Equal Opportunity Guidelines, which we're all going to do, aren't we? This next one I really love. Run a listen and learn session with some of your members. A listen and learn session is whereby people in positions of leadership and power sit and listen and learn from other groups in the community, in the golfing community. The Male Champions of Change program that our CEO Steve Pitt is a part of, something that Steve Pitt ran with female staff at Golf Australia. And his role was to sit there and ask questions and not get defensive and not rebut, but just sit and be open and listening and learning about what is the experience like for women at Golf Australia? What is the experience like for women who work in the game? And he learned so much. And in fact, it was pretty positive. He learned a lot of really great things, and we were able to give him some areas, that things do get a little bit tricky. And what are some of the things that make it better for us when we are challenged? And he got so much from that. But that's something you can run with different cohorts in your club. Do you know how long it takes for someone to feel like they actually belong in your club? How many years? 4. And it's really fascinating on these roadshows, the number of times I've said, someone will get up and they'll say, oh, look, I'm a relative newcomer to the game. I'm pretty new to the game. And I'm like, how long have you been playing for? 6 years. I'm like, how's that new? You've been here for like all of high school. That's a long time. Someone the other day said, oh, I'm new to the game. How long? 9 years. 9 years. And they're still not feeling like they're established in the game yet after 9 years. So think about it. I talked at the start about what is it like for someone trying to enter the game. I've shared you with my experience, but who else in your club can you learn from and listen to and do a listen and learn session? Board, sit with some of the women in your club. What is it like for you? The women's committee, sit with younger women in your club and see what their experience is like at your club. Okay? So I think they're pretty powerful. Become a signatory to the RNA Women in Golf Charter. On the back of your Vision 2025 flyers tonight actually is the RNA Women in Golf Charter, and we'll be working with clubs later in the year to encourage them to sign up to that as well. Around grassroots participation, hands up our clubs here that have got a My Golf centre at your clubs. If you don't have one, we strongly encourage that you get one. If you have a My Golf centre, we also strongly encourage that potentially you explore having a My Golf Girls program. That is an all-female My Golf experience in the game. Why? Because we know that young girls often prefer an all-female experience for the same reason that some adult women who are learning the game prefer a female experience. Okay. What I can tell you from my time in the AFL, up to the under-12s, every time we only used to offer Auskick in a mixed sex experience and also junior footy. They could play with the boys until they were 12, and we didn't offer junior girls footy at that point. And when we started to offer a single sex, all-female Auskick group, not a whole different centre, but just we had grade prep 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and a girls group, and we started to offer under 12 junior girls. What we found is for every girl that we already had that was participating in a mixed sex context, there were 4 more we would get when we offered all female. 4 more. That was 80% of our participation base under 12 that we weren't actually able to attract because we were only offering a mixed sex experience. So who's waiting outside your door for their invitation to come in and waiting for you to give them a product that suits their needs? So if you're running a My Golf centre, we suggest even now expand and try and have a My Golf Girls group. And if you're not running My Golf, we encourage you to have a go at that. I know that some clubs in different areas and different numbers and sizes, it can be a bit tricky. But if you do have the capacity, we strongly encourage you to do that. When you do your induction, really focus in some of the off-course stuff as well as the on-course induction into the game. You might look at someone who's responsible for contacting people who haven't played a round of golf for, say, 2 months. Give them a call and find out where you've been. We've missed you. Why don't you come down and play? Come down Friday night, we're doing this. You might have special social events for newcomers, for women who are in their first 4 years membership. Why? Because they're going to grow up together as a cohort, aren't they? So connect them somehow through some of your social events that you might run. And I love this one down the bottom. Identify non-golf activities that you could run to attract women to your club. Bring them in for something else and keep them for golf. Now I've heard some really interesting ideas that are already happening in different golf clubs. So I'm really open to what you might all do to bring women to your club for reasons other than golf. What are some of your suggestions? Go, throw them out. Bang. What do you do? Or do you only offer golf? Bridge, bingo, art. I love this. Art class is fantastic. Cooking, unreal. Cooking classes. What else do you run at your clubs? Pilates. You run Pilates. Unreal. Do you do it on the grass outside? You should. It is really interesting. I played golf at a club last year, a really nice club that has a lot of sand that I got stuck in a lot. I should not be playing on a course like that. However, I sat there with the women from the club that had beautifully taken me around and supported me all the way through my shots out of the bunker. And I sat there and I said, do you do anything else apart from golf here? Oh no, it's just golf. And I'm like, look at all this, it's a beautiful course. Like, look at all this beautiful grass. I'd love to do sunrise Pilates and sunset yoga. Imagine doing your sun salutations here. How beautiful. And they were like, oh no, well, we haven't really thought of that. And I said, you know what you do? When you're running your yoga class or your Pilates class, you know what you've got running just across the fairway, on the practice fairway? What's happening over there? A women's clinic. So I'm doing my sun salutations in the morning and I go, oh my God, there's women's golf here. I didn't even know women could play golf. Oh, there's women's golf. Oh, they run women's clinics. I might have a go at that. So you bring them in for yoga and you keep them for golf. What else you got for me? Bird watching, unreal. Someone else suggested that last week down in Gippsland. You'd have amazing wildlife at some of your courses. What else could you do? You've got a gym. Who's got a gym? You guys have got a gym at your course? Fantastic. What else could you do? Wine tasting. No, you were happy at that, weren't you? Wine tasting. Was that you? That's a woo! Wine tasting. What else can we do at our golf clubs? It's not about golf. Fashion parades, fantastic. Foot golf, excellent. So, sorry? Bridge? Yep, fantastic. Let's think about some of your, how are you going to get 25-year-old women to come into your golf club? What things do they like to do? I totally missed any of that. I'm just going to leave that there. How do we get 25-year-old women to walk into your golf clubs for something other than golf? Champagne and strawberries. A creche. Fantastic. I heard of a club in Melbourne recently that had the opportunity to build a library or build a creche. Which one did you think they chose? Yep. And that's not just for women, because men do a lot of child caring now. They take a lot of responsibility for the caring of their children. So there's lots of different things that you can do where your club becomes a service and a place, a hub where the community can come and enjoy your facility. It doesn't have to be about golf. Bring them in for reasons other than golf and make them stay for golf. Other suggestions last week, 21st birthdays, hire out your venues, weddings, restaurant, yep, absolutely. If people if people book to play golf, book to have a 21st or a birthday party at your function room, give them a whole bunch of flyers for a free round of 9 holes golf. If it's 21st and you want young people, here's a round of golf for you for free for coming and booking here. You know, and your mate gets in for half price or something so they can come and play together, or a 2 for 1 or something like that. Capitalise on the fact you've got a whole young group of people coming into your club. How do you get them to stay? All right, so be creative. Remember, transformational mindset. Love it. Innovation. High performance and coaching. A couple of things you can do. If you don't have a community instructor at your club, so a coach that can help facilitate some of these entry-level programs like My Golf, you can work with some of your existing members at your club, particularly your female members. So we've got some female community instructors at your club, and we can support you through some of that. You know how I said at the start of the night that 80% of our club golfers are 55 and over? And that's a really good thing in lots of different ways. Do you know how much life experience and how much golf experience is in this room tonight, let alone in our whole golf clubs? You all have so much experience in the game. Don't keep it to yourselves. Do a community instructor course and get involved in helping teaching and coaching some of the game as people enter the game. Work with a golf professional to support them. These are some things that you can do. Making sure that your golf professional has done the women's module that the PGA offers. We're reviewing that with the PGA at the moment, but there's a specific educational module, that our golf professionals can do that will upskill them on the needs of women and girls. So I ask them to do that. And lastly, marketing and positioning. When you put your publications out into the world, your newsletters, your emails, how do you address them? How do you put the images? How many images of men and women do you have? Don't count them one by one and we've got 51.1%. Just make sure it's relatively balanced. Tell the story of everyone, young people and older people. Don't tell it proportionately, but tell it in terms of how you value both genders. And I'm hoping that's equally. All right. Think about the paraphernalia and the photographs that you have up on your golf walls in your clubhouse. When people walk in, ask someone that comes with you to your golf club that's not of golf. And when they walk in for the first time, ask them, what do you see? What does it look like through your lens? What could we do differently? What are we doing really well? You know, think about how we celebrate the role that everyone plays in our golf clubs. So commit to gender balances on images within our clubs. So good to see you all sharing so openly with each other too. And the energy does really shift. And you're all really, you know what happens when you all talk to each other about this stuff? You're all smiling. You're all smiling. How wonderful. You're talking about what golf brings you and what you want to bring to golf and what you want to leave behind, and you're smiling. I love that. It means you're really happy and you really enjoy what you do. What a great gift that we all have, this sport. It plays a wonderful role in our lives. I'm not going to ask you to share the answers as a group, but what I want to see from you now is a show of hands of anyone from tonight after that when you've gone back and re-answered these questions. Hands up if your position has changed. I thought my legacy was going to be this, but now it's that. Or why I do what I do in golf is this, but now actually I think it's that. Hands up if that's you. Partly, a little bit. That's okay. A little bit, yep. Great. It's okay if it hasn't changed. There's no right or wrong answer here. But put your hand up if your understanding is now of what your role is and your legacy piece. Put your hand up if it's now deeper and richer and you have a better idea of how you can be the leader and leave that legacy. Hands up if that's you now. Fantastic. Thank you. And that's essentially what we're seeing all around the country, is when you're a volunteer in a club, there's just so much stuff to get done, isn't there? You've got to get people out on the course playing, trying to get the comps going, trying to get new membership, trying to get people paying the membership fees, you know, but running a special thing over there, and you just get caught in the day-to-day stuff around our operations of our sporting clubs. We don't actually ever really put enough time aside to actually plan and really think about what we actually do. It's really quite unconscious. And I hope tonight has given you an opportunity to sort of think a little bit deeper, think a bit more consciously, or increase your awareness, your conscious awareness about what your role is, but what your platform is, the opportunity that you've got to leave your mark on the game. When I think about, you know, AFLW and I watch those games, I still do some commentary. I'm back here on Sunday, I'm calling for the Crows. But I think about when I watch those girls out there playing, Sarah Perkins, who plays here, is one of my kids, Sarah Allen, you know, from Millicent. I worked with her in the National Academy, and I see those kids out there on the field playing, and you can see your fingerprints all over the game in some way, shape or form. And you know you've left it in a better place than when you found it. And I say to all of you in golf, I mean, you've got a wonderful opportunity to change the future of the game forever. But there's only one person that can change that, and that's you. It's your sport, they're your clubs. It's your club's future. And the question I ask you is, are you leading your club for today's members, or are you leading your club so that it remains strong and healthy and vibrant in the future? But the only person that can answer that question is you. I'm really excited about this strategy. I'm really excited about what we're doing globally. I'm really excited to be working at Golf Australia with wonderful people who believe in this in an authentic way. They're not just doing it because it's, you know, we'll tick the box, or it's, you know, everyone else is doing it. They're doing it because they know it's fundamentally good for people. And if it's good for people, it's good for our game. So it's fantastic to work with a really wonderful people who've bought into this. But then how this takes shape, well, that's on you, because they're your clubs and it's your sport and it's your future. I'm really excited about working with you all on this. Like I said tonight, you're not on your own. We are your national sporting organisation. Our role is to serve and support you, and we absolutely want to do that as we move forward. Thank you very much for your time tonight. I look forward to what we do together in the future. Thank you.